The forest doesn't care about your bloodline. For 10 years, the greenwood expanse was my only home. The wolves were my only family. My protector was a giant black wolf, a silent shadow I called Basalt. We hunted, we bled, we survived. Then the civilized shifters came. They dragged me from the wild, called me a feral defect, and threw me in a cage. They wanted to break me. They didn't know I was bringing the forest's judgment with me, and they definitely didn't know that their Alpha King was the same wolf I'd slept beside for a decade. The wind was a sharp blade against Rowan's cheek, tasting of pine and the metallic tang of an approaching snowstorm. She was 18, or perhaps 19. The seasons were her only calendar. For 10 years since the fire that had erased her human memory, the greenwood expanse had been her world. Her pack was a blur of grey and brown fur 6 timber wolves who had accepted her a shifter child when her own kind had not. She was thinner than them, and she hated the clumsy human skin she sometimes woke in, but she was fast. Her senses, honed by a decade of survival, were sharper than any human's. And she had Basalt. He appeared at her side, a silent mass of black fur that stood shoulder height to her. He was not like the others. He was larger, quieter, and carried an air of ancient sorrow. He was her guardian. When the pack scattered, he stayed. When she was injured, he licked her wounds. When she was in her human form, huddled in the hollow of a great spruce, he slept pressed against the entrance, a formidable shadow. She was crouched on a high ridge, her ragged clothes smelling of earth and dried blood, when a new scent hit her. It was wrong. It was oil exhaust and the sharp, anxious sweat of men. "Meet men," she whispered the human words thick on her tongue. Basalt's head snapped up. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a sound that vibrated through Rowan's bones. She trusted that growl more than any spoken word. They came from the east, crashing through the underbrush with arrogant carelessness. 4 men in identical dark green uniforms carrying weapons that weren't for hunting deer. They wore the crest of the Stonecrest Dominion, the civilized pack that claimed the valley, but never dared to enter the deep woods. "Spread out," one barked. "Beta Corbin wants this quadrant cleared before the summit." Rowan and Basalt sank back into the shadows, but one of the men stopped lifting his nose. "Wait, can't you smell that it's strange? Not just wolf, it's female. Omega." The word was a brand on her very soul, a scent she couldn't scrub off, even here. To the wild wolves it meant family. To these men she was about to learn it meant prey. They found her den. It wasn't much, just a hollowed-out log, lined with her treasures. Pretty stones, a bird's skull, and an old cracked leather boot. Gods! One man breathed, picking up the boot. "It's a feral, a shifter." Rowan knew this was it. The confrontation she had avoided for a decade. Basalt knew it too. He shoved her behind him, his body a rigid wall of muscle fangs bared. "Easy, big fella," the lead man, Jet said, raising his rifle. It wasn't a hunting rifle. It was a tranquilizer gun, sleek and black. "We're not here to hurt you. We're just taking it home." Rowan wouldn't let them take Basalt. She wouldn't let them take her. She was a creature of the forest, and she would fight like one. As the first man lunged, she dropped from the branch above him, a hunting knife, her only human tool scavenged from a wreck in her hand. She moved like a weasel, all speed and sharp edges. She cut the strap on his rifle and was gone before he could grab her. But there were 4 of them. "Corbin's not paying us enough for this," one yelled, dodging her. Basalt was a whirlwind of black fury. He took down one man, his jaws closing on a shoulder, and threw him against a tree. But they were prepared. A dart hissed, and Basalt yelped a sound of shock, not pain. He stumbled. "Basalt!" Rowan screamed, her voice raw. Another dart. He looked at her, his golden eyes full of confusion, and his powerful legs buckled. He fell. "No!" She ran to him, ignoring the men, ignoring the guns. She threw her body over his, her knife pointed at the world. "No! Leave him leave!" The man named Jet sighed, his face hard. "She's an Omega, unmated, and completely feral. This is a mess." He looked at her, his eyes cold. "It's for your own good, girl." He didn't fire the dart. He stepped forward, and with the practiced ease of a man who breaks horses, struck the side of her head with the butt of his rifle. The world exploded in white-hot pain. Her last sensation was the smell of pine, the feel of Basalt's thick fur under her cheek, and the invading terrible scent of rust and oil. Waking up was a symphony of wrongness. The air was the first offense. It was dead, stale, dry, and poisoned with chemical smells that burned her nose, bleach floor wax, and something sickeningly sweet. The ground was wrong, too. Not soft earth and moss, but hard, cold, unnervingly flat stone. Rowan was in a cage, a small room, 4 walls, 3 of concrete and 1 of bars. A thin blanket was bunched in the corner. She was naked beneath a rough, canvas-like shift that scraped her skin. They had taken her knife. They had taken her clothes. They had hosed her down. The memory came back in a rush of ice-cold water and rough Bristles men shouting as she fought. "Where is Basalt?" she croaked. Her throat was raw. "Oh, it speaks." A woman stood outside the bars. She was tall, with hair the color of polished copper, pulled back so tightly it seemed to paint a permanent sneer on her face. She wore a crisp white coat, and her scent was sharp, clinical, like the room, but with an underlying bitterness. "I am Gwenna Monroe," the woman said, as if the name should mean something. "Chief healer of the Stonecrest Dominion. And you are a problem." Gwenna held a small tablet, a stylus clicking impatiently. "Age!" Rowan lunged at the bars. The metal was cold and unforgiving. "Where is my wolf?" Gwenna didn't even flinch. "You mean the large black wolf found with you? He was a rogue, unmarked, a danger to the border patrols. He's been processed." "Processed," Rowan repeated. The word was alien. "What? Processed?" "He's gone," Gwenna said with a sigh, as if explaining to a simple child. "Put down. Your lucky Beta Corbin saw value in you, though I, for one, fail to see it." Rowan's world tilted. "Gone. Put down." The words clicked into place. Dead. The sound that tore itself from her throat was not human. It was a raw, primal scream of loss, a wolf's howl of a shattered bond. She threw herself against the bars, against the walls, her nails scraping concrete. Basalt, her protector, her only family, dead. Because of these people. She collapsed, a heap of raw grief, slamming her fists against the unyielding floor. The loss was a physical void, a cold, empty space where his warmth should have been. Gwenna watched her expression, one of detached scientific interest. Extreme emotional distress, primal vocalizations. Subject reverts to animalistic responses under pressure. She made a note on her tablet. She is, as we thought, nothing more than an animal. "I will kill you." Rowan whispered the words a promise. Gwenna actually laughed, a short, barking sound. "You'll do nothing. You're a feral Omega, a defect. In the wild, you're a resource. Here, you're a burden. Beta Corbin seems to think you can be reintegrated. He's a fool." The cell door at the end of the hall buzzed open. A man entered, walking with a heavy, arrogant stride. He was built like a bull with a short, military-style haircut, and eyes that were too small for his large face. His scent was like soured milk and iron. This was Beta Corbin. Well, he boomed, stopping in front of her cage. Is it clean? Physically. Gwenna said, her distaste clear. Mentally, it's a lost cause. She's broken. Corbin grinned a predator's smile. Broken is good. Broken can be trained. The Alpha King is due back tomorrow. We'll present her to him then. A tribute from the wild. He will be repulsed, Gwenna stated. He will be intrigued, Corbin corrected. The king has appetites, and this one, he said, staring at Rowan with a look that made her skin crawl, is pure untamed instinct, a rare vintage. He rapped his knuckles on the bars as if she were a zoo animal. Get her cleaned up properly, Gwenna. Put her in something other than a sack. I want the king to see exactly what we found. Gwenna's eyes narrowed. As you wish, Beta. As they walked away, their voices echoed. And the Black Wolf? Gwenna asked. Still unconscious in the containment wing, Corbin said. The tranquilizers we use for the king are potent. It'll be out for hours. Once the king sees this feral, we'll decide what to do with the beast. Maybe we'll let her watch us put it down. Rowan's head snapped up. Unconscious. Not dead. Not processed. Lies. Gwenna had lied. She had used the lie to break her. A new feeling, cold and sharp as her lost knife, cut through the grief. Rage. They had Basalt. They had lied. And they were going to kill him. Basalt, she whispered to the cold, empty room. I will come. I will find you. She was no longer just a grieving girl. She was a hunter, and this concrete cage was just another forest she would learn to stalk. The next day they dragged her from the cell. 2 male guards smelling of soap and sweat handled her as if she were made of glass. Glass that might shatter and cut them. Gwenna had ordered her prepared. This involved another humiliating hose down and a simple, loose-fitting blue dress that felt alien and restrictive. The king is back. Gwenna informed her, her face a mask of bored efficiency. He will see you in the audience hall. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not make any sudden moves. You will show him respect. Kneel when he enters. Rowan said nothing. Her mind was a map of the citadel's scents and sounds. She had catalogued the guards' patrol routes, the smell of the kitchen south, and the sharp antiseptic smell of the containment wing west down 1 level. She had one goal: get to Basalt. If this king was a distraction, so be it. They marched her into a cavernous room. The floor was polished marble, reflecting the light from high-arched windows. A dozen shifters, all dressed in fine, dark clothes, stood around, speaking in low, serious tones. They stopped and stared as she entered. Roa felt their gazes like a physical weight. They smelled of judgment, of old money, and of a complex, layered pack hierarchy she couldn't understand. She was a stray dog in a hall of champions. Presenting the acquisition. Beta Corbin announced, his voice booming with false pride, a ripple of whispers. Feral, an Omega. Look at the state of it. Rowan's eyes darted to every exit. She ignored the stares, her muscles coiled, ready to run. Kneel, Gwenna hissed, pressing a hand on her shoulder. Rowan shook her off, earning a gasp from the crowd. She did not kneel. Not for these people. A heavy door at the far end of the hall opened. A new scent rolled in, preceding the man who wore it. It was a complex, powerful scent. Rain on hot stone, old leather, and an undercurrent of absolute, unquestionable authority. It was the scent of a true alpha. He was tall, with dark hair cut short, and a face that looked carved from granite. He wore a simple dark suit, no crown, no robes, but he moved with an energy that made the air crackle. This was the Alpha King. He looked tired. His eyes, a deep, piercing grey, swept the room, and the silence was total. Corbin, the king said, his voice, a low, smooth baritone. You said this was urgent. "It is Alpha King Rhett," Corbin said, bowing low. "We found this on the border. A feral, a lost shifter living with wolves for a decade, we think." King Rhett's gaze landed on Rowan. She met it. She would not bow. His eyes were familiar. The color was wrong, but the intensity, the weariness. He took a step, then another. He was close enough now that his scent completely filled her lungs. And that's when her world stopped. Beneath the rain, beneath the leather, beneath the man, there was a third hidden scent. It was faint, buried deep, but it was unmistakable. It was the scent of Herden. It was the smell of pine needles, of cave dirt, and of the giant black wolf who had protected her for 10 years. It was the scent of basalt. Rowan's mind fractured. It wasn't possible. This man smelled like a wolf. What? The word was a breath. King Rhett froze his eyes, widening, almost imperceptibly. He was staring at her, but it felt like he was looking through her. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice no longer a king's command, but a strained whisper. Rowan took one trembling step. The guards tensed. Gwenna hissed, "Stay." Rowan ignored them. She walked right up to the Alpha King, a man who could kill her with a word. She lifted a trembling hand, not to his face, but to his chest, right over his heart. She closed her eyes, and she inhaled. There it was. The two scents, man and wolf, blended into one. They were not two things. They were the same thing. Her eyes snapped open. She looked at his face, really looked at it. The weariness, the hidden sorrow, the sheer overwhelming power she had always felt from her wolf. It was him. "Basalt," she whispered. The word was a stone dropped into a silent pool. The entire room heard it. Alpha King Rhett Kincaid flinched, his face a mask of regal control shattered. He stared at her, and in his eyes she saw the golden-flecked gaze of her wolf. He saw her, too. He didn't see a feral Omega. He saw Rowan, the girl who had shared her scraps of rabbit with him, the girl who had pulled porcupine quills from his muzzle, the girl he had left behind. "How?" He breathed his hand, coming up to cover hers, his skin burning against her own. "It is you," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Her knees, which had refused to bend for a king, now buckled in shock. He caught her. In front of his entire court, the Alpha King lunged forward and caught the feral Omega in his arms, holding her as if she were the only thing keeping him upright. Gwenna Munro's face was a study in pure, unadulterated shock. Corbin's was a mask of thunder. "Everyone," King Rhett said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that was pure basalt. "Get out!" The court scrambled to obey. The audience hall emptied in a rush of silk whispers and panicked backward glances. In seconds they were alone, Rowan still held in Rhett's arms, and the two stunned guards at the door. "You as well," Rhett ordered, and they fled. He didn't let her go. He simply stood there, holding her, his eyes closed. Rowan could feel the thunder of his heart against her cheek. He was trembling. This powerful king was trembling. "I never thought," he started, his voice thick. "Rowan, I never thought I would see you again." He knew her name. She had never told him her name. "You left," she said, the accusation simple, raw. "You were gone." He pulled back his hands, gentle on her arms. He guided her to the steps of his throne, and they sat, a king in a tailored suit and a feral girl in a borrowed dress, surrounded by shocked silence. 10 years ago," he said, his voice distant, "I was not king. I was the heir. My uncle, who was regent, wanted the throne. He and his allies set a trap." He looked at his hands. They used a poison, a hybrid of wolfsbane and silver nitrate. It wasn't meant to kill me. It was meant to break me, to shatter the bond between my man and my wolf, and it worked. His eyes met hers, filled with a decade of pain. I was trapped, Rowan, stuck in my wolf form. My mind, it was fragmented. I was more beast than man. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. I could only run. I ran from my home, from my pack, driven by poison and pain, and I ran until my legs gave out. I ran to the greenwood to die. Rowan's breath hitched. She remembered. A huge black wolf, bleeding, half mad with pain, collapsing by her stream. She had been terrified, but he had smelled alone, like her. You were sick, she whispered. I was dying, he corrected. And then this small, fierce creature, a girl, not even a woman, found me. You weren't afraid. You brought me water in your cupped hands. You brought me herbs. I don't know where you learned it, but you brought me yarrow for the fever. And you brought me your pack. They smelled you, Rowan said, remembering. They smelled hurt. You saved me. Rhett said, his voice raw. Your presence, your omega nature, it centered me. It gave my wolf a focus, a purpose. Protect. Over the years, the poison faded. My mind came back, piece by piece. But I was still just basalt. I was your wolf. Then you left, she repeated, the hurt still there. One day 6 months ago, I woke up, he said. And the shift, it wasn't broken anymore. I was me. I was Rhett Kincaid. I could shift back. And I knew my uncle had destroyed my family. I had to go back. I had to take my throne. You left me, she said, tears welling. I couldn't take you, he said, his anguish matching hers. To take you from the wild, to throw you into this viper's nest. You were safe there. You were free. I thought I was protecting you by leaving you. He dropped his head into his hands. And now Corbin, he dragged you here. He put you in a cage. The rage that flashed in his eyes was pure basalt. It was the rage she'd seen him use to protect her from a mother bear. He lied, Rowan said, the thought hitting her. Gwenna, the healer, she said you were processed. She said, dead. Rhett's head snapped up. What? She lied. To break me. Rhett's face became impossibly cold. She will answer for that. They all will. But first, you. He looked at her, his gaze softening. You are not a prisoner, Rowan. You are a guest. You are the reason I am alive. He called for his personal guards, not Corbin's men, but 2 older, scarred warriors. He had them escort Rowan, not to the cells, but to the royal wing. She was given a suite of rooms that was larger than any space she'd ever been in. It was full of soft things, rugs, velvet chairs, and a bed piled high with silk cushions and a down-filled duvet. That night, Rhett came to see her. He found her on the floor in a corner, having pulled all the blankets and pillows from the bed. She had built a nest. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock her. He simply walked over his shoes, silent on the marble. He sat on the floor just outside the circle of her nest, his back against the wall. This is better, she mumbled, her voice thick with the day's emotion. The bed, it's too soft, it's wrong. I know, he said, his voice a low rumble. In the wild, you always made a nest of pine boughs. He remembered. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Rowan spoke. Basalt. He's part of me, Rowan, just as Rhett is. He's my pack, she said, her throat tight. He looked at her, his grey eyes piercing in the dim light. Rowan, he said, and his voice was heavy with a new dangerous emotion. I am the Alpha King. This is my pack. and a new terrifying and exhilarating thought entered her mind. If he was her pack, then what did that make this place, and what did that make her? The pack was in chaos. The feral Omega was not in the dungeon. She was in the royal wing. She did not eat in the mess hall. Meals were brought to her by the king's personal staff. She did not kneel. She did not bow. And the Alpha King, who was known for his cold and ruthless efficiency, seemed gentle with her. Gwenna Monroe and Beta Corbin were furious. "He's lost his mind," Corbin snarled, pacing his office. The walls were covered with maps of the territory, but his focus was on the citadel. "She's an animal. He's treating her like a Luna." "He's treating her like a pet," Gwenna corrected her voice. "Like ice. A dangerous, unpredictable one. The elders are furious. The pack feels his distraction. And the full moon is in 3 days." Corbin stopped pacing. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "The full moon. She is an unmated, unbonded Omega," Gwenna said. "And a feral one at that. Her scent, it will be overwhelming. The unranked males will be driven insane by it. She will cause a riot. Unless," Corbin said, "she is claimed." He looked at Gwenna. "You wanted him. This is your chance to get rid of her. And my chance to remind the pack who holds the real power." Rowan could feel the moon's approach. It was a pressure in her blood, a static electric hum under her skin. Her senses, already sharp, went into overdrive. The citadel was a cacophony of smells, the guards' anxiety, the kitchen's roasting meat, the underlying hunger from the other shifters. Males whom she had barely noticed were now staring. They didn't meet her eyes, but she could feel their gazes on her back. Their scent was acrid, filled with a new aggressive interest. She retreated to her nest. Rhett found her there, her knees drawn to her chest. "Rowan, what's wrong?" "They stink," she hissed. "They all stink. They want." Rhett's posture changed. He went from concerned man to protective alpha in a heartbeat. He stepped into the hallway, and his voice was a low command that rattled the walls. "Guards, double the patrol on this floor. No one comes to this wing without my express permission. Am I understood?" He came back in his face, tight with anger. "This is my fault. I've been so focused on you I've forgotten the law, the instinct, the moon." It's the heat," she whispered a word she knew from the wolves. "A time of danger, a time of change." "Yes," he said. "For an unmated Omega, it can be. The pack, it's a tradition. At the full moon, feast unmated alphas can issue a challenge for a mate." Rowan's head snapped up. "A challenge. You're under my protection. No one would dare," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The night of the full moon feast, the entire citadel felt like a drum stretched tight. Rhett had insisted Rowan stay in her room. "You are not safe with them," he'd said. But Rowan was not a creature to hide. She was a wolf. She had been Basalt's partner. She would not be this king's prisoner. She slipped out of her room, clad in the simple tunic and leggings the guards had provided. She padded barefoot through the stone corridors, following the noise until she reached the great feasting hall. It was packed. Hundreds of shifters, all in their finest, were eating and drinking. At the head table sat Beta Corbin, in the Alpha King's chair. Gwenna sat beside him. "Where is the king?" one of the elders, a woman with iron-grey hair, asked. "The king is indisposed," Corbin announced, standing. "He is occupied with his new hobby." A wave of laughter and uneasy murmurs. "It is a disgrace," another Alpha shouted. "He abandons his pack for a feral. She has clouded his mind." Gwenna added her voice, high and clear. She is a defect. She brings the sickness of the wild into our civilized home. She is not sick. The voice came from the doorway. It was Rowan. The hall went utterly silent. Every head turned. Rowan walked into the center of the room, her chin high. She was terrified. Her hands were shaking. But she was a wolf. She would not cower. Corbin's eyes lit with triumph. It speaks, and it dares to enter our sacred hall on the night of the moon. Feral, you have no rights here. I have a right, Rowan said, her voice shaking but clear. I am pack. You are nothing, Corbin roared, striding towards her. You are a disease, and I, he pointed to himself, am the cure. As beta of this pack with the king, having abdicated his duties, I declare this Omega a threat. She must be contained or culled. No, Rowan said, standing her ground. Or, Corbin said, his smile turning lecherous, she can be claimed. I beta Corbin challenge for the right to claim this feral Omega. To tame her, for the good of the pack. He lung section. He grabbed her arm, his fingers like a steel trap. And no one is here to stop me. Get your hand off her. The voice was not Rhett's. It was the Alpha King's. It was Bossalt's. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Rhett was standing in the main archway. He was not wearing a suit. He was dressed in simple black, and his eyes were glowing a faint, terrifying gold. Beta Corbin, Rhett said, his voice, a low, lethal purr. He walked forward each step, a deliberate, measured sound. You are in my chair. Corbin, for all his bluster, was a beta. The presence of a true enraged Alpha King was a physical weight. He flinched and let go of Rowan's arm. Alpha, I was maintaining order. Order, Rhett said the word as if it tasted foul. You were maintaining order by challenging for an Omega who is already under my protection. Your protection, Gwenna spat, rising. She is a thing, not a person. She's feral. She is, Rhett said, his voice suddenly soft as he looked at Rowan. The one who saved my life. She's the one who kept me sane when poison shattered my mind. She is the heart of my wild pack. He turned his gaze back to the hall, and his voice boomed, filled with alpha power. You are right. An Omega cannot be left unclaimed on the full moon. The pack is agitated. He walked past Corbin. He walked past the elders. He walked straight to Rowan, who was standing, trembling in the center of it all. He went down on one knee. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. The Alpha King knelt. He knelt before the feral Omega. Rowan. He said his voice for her, alone, but it carried in the silence. For 10 years you were my guardian, my healer, my only friend. They call you feral. They call you a defect. He took her calloused, dirt-stained hand and held it up for the pack to see. I call her mine. He rose, turning to the stunned, silent hall. There will be no challenge, he announced, his voice an ironclad law. Because she is not available. The feral Omega is the king's. She is my mate, and she will be your queen. The declaration hung in the air, thick and shocking. Queen. The word was a bomb. Corbin looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Gwenna Monroe's mask of composure finally visibly cracked. Her face, for 1 second, was a portrait of pure, unadulterated hatred. Then just as quickly, she smoothed it. My king, she said, her voice dripping with false concern as she stepped forward. Rhett, think about what you are saying. The shock of finding her. The moon. You are not in your right mind. A queen. She can't even speak properly. How can she guide a pack? She guided me, Rhett said, his voice flat and cold. For 10 years. That is more than anyone in this room can claim. But the bloodline, an elder protested. The sanctity. She is an Omega. Rhett's voice cut through the noise. Of a pure, untainted line, or she would not have survived the wild. She is perhaps the only one of us who is not compromised. His eyes flicked to Corbin. This is madness. Corbin roared, finally finding his voice. He's besotted. He's unfit. I, Beta Corbin, challenge this. You challenge me? Rhett asked, his voice dangerously soft. I challenge this union. It's a sham. He's using pack law to protect his pet. Then let us use pack law to confirm it, a new voice said. It was the iron-grey-haired elder, the first matron page. The king has declared his intent to mate. The Omega must accept. All eyes turned to Rowan. She was surrounded by hundreds of staring, hostile faces, by laws she didn't understand, by a man who was and was not her basalt. She looked at Rhett. He was not demanding. He was not commanding. His eyes were wide with a new terrifying vulnerability. He was offering her everything, and he was terrified she would say no. She thought of the cold cage. She thought of Gwenna's lie. She thought of Corbin's hands. And she thought of Basalt sleeping by her den, his body a wall of warmth against the world. I am his, Rowan said, her voice clear. And he is mine. She looked at Corbin. We are pack. You are not. It was a declaration of war. You little bitch. Corbin snarled and he lunged. Not at Rhett, at Rowan. He never made it. Rhett moved so fast he was a black blur. He caught Corbin by the throat and slammed him against the stone wall, lifting him a foot off the ground. You dare. Rhett choked out his fangs, descending. Rhett, no. It was Gwenna. She ran forward, not to Rhett, but to Rowan. Please make him stop. He'll kill him. You're his mate. You can calm him. Rowan looked at the woman. Gwenna's face was a mask of panic. Her hands were clasped. Her scent was a spike of fear. But it was the wrong fear. Rowan's mind, her feral mind, was a catalogue of scents. She knew the smell of fear for one's life. This was not it. This was the smell of fear of a plan going wrong. And beneath it, beneath Gwenna's expensive perfume, was something else. A faint, bitter, metallic tang. Rowan knew that smell. It was the smell that had clung to the tranquilizer darts that Jet and his men had shot. It was the smell she had once long ago smelled on the ground near her den, just before Basalt had gotten sick. All those years ago. You. Rowan whispered, her eyes locked on Gwenna. Gwenna, sensing the shift, tried to pull back. Please, help him. The darts, Rowan said. Gwenna froze. The men in the woods. Rowan continued the pieces, clicking into place. They smelled of you. What is she talking about? The elder page demanded. She's delirious, Gwenna shrieked. The poison. Rhett's voice was a dead, cold whisper. He had heard. He dropped Corbin, who fell to the floor, gasping. Rhett turned. What? Did you say, Rowan? She smells sick, Rowan said, pointing a trembling finger at Gwenna. Like the metal that made you wolf. Same smell. Rhett's world tilted. He stared at Gwenna Monroe, the healer, the daughter of the Monroe family, famous for their herbalism and alchemy, the woman who had been at his uncle's side when he was poisoned, the woman who had treated him, whose poultices had only made him worse, driving him to the forest. Gwenna. Rhett whispered the name, an execution. Gwenna's face crumpled. The game was up. He was weak, she suddenly shrieked, her composure breaking into a million pieces. My father was the rightful regent, you. You were a boy. You were never meant to be king. It was you. Rhett breathed the 10-year-old betrayal hitting him. You poisoned me. I helped my family, she screamed. And I would have had you. I would have healed you if you hadn't run. And then she spat, pointing at Corbin. He brings this animal back. He ruins everything. You, Corbin gasped, climbing to his feet. You were in on this. You told me. You told me the king was weak, that I should be beta. You were using me. You were a tool, you oaf, Gwenna screamed, and that's when Rowan saw it. The civilized world just as deadly as the wild. Gwenna in her rage had forgotten her audience. She had forgotten the feral Omega. She reached into the pocket of her healer's coat. Rowan didn't see it as a pocket. She saw the subtle shift in weight, the tensing of the shoulder, the intent to harm. Before anyone could move, as Gwenna's hand came out holding a small gleaming silver needle, a syringe, Rowan moved. She didn't move like a person. She moved like a wolf. She crossed the 10 feet between them in a low, blurring rush under Gwenna's guard. She didn't grab the hand. She slammed her shoulder into Gwenna's hip, using her entire body weight to break the woman's balance. Gwenna shrieked as she felt the syringe flying from her hand and skittering across the marble floor, coming to a stop at Rhett's feet. Rowan was on top of Gwenna in an instant, not with fists, but with her hands fisted in the healer's coat, her face inches from the woman's. She didn't hit. She growled. A deep, chest-rumbling, feral sound that promised death. The entire hall was frozen. The feral Omega in her simple tunic had just taken down the pack's chief healer, the architect of a 10-year betrayal. Rhett Kincaid looked down at the syringe. He looked at Corbin, who was white with terror. He looked at Gwenna, pinned by the animal she so despised. And then he looked at Rowan, his queen. Seize them. Rhett's voice was not a shout. It was a blade of ice cutting through the stunned, chaotic air of the feasting hall. It was the voice of a king. His personal guards, 2 towering shifters who had been standing immobile by the archway, moved with a sudden, terrifying speed. They were on the traitors before either could fully comprehend their fate. Corbin, the blustering, arrogant beta, offered no resistance. His face was a mask of ashen terror, his eyes wide, his scent, a pathetic mix of sour fear and disbelief. He stumbled when the guard grabbed him, a choked, gurgling sound escaping his throat. Gwenna Monroe, however, fought. She was a cornered viper. "No, you can't!" She shrieked, her nails clawing at the guard's arm. "He'll tell you it was my father. He made me. I was helping the pack." She turned her wild, tear-streaked face to Rhett. "My king! Rhett, please!" Her voice cracked a desperate, manipulative plea. "I loved you. I always loved you. I did it. I did it all for us. To make us strong, he made me poison you." Rhett took one slow, deliberate step towards her. The guard holding her tensed, but Rhett simply looked down at the woman who had been his healer, his uncle's confidant, and his betrayer. His face was carved from granite. "You loved power," he said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "You poisoned your alpha. You corrupted my beta. You preyed on my absence. And—" His gaze flickered to Rowan, who was still standing, coiled and breathing hard. "You lied to my mate." He said the word mate, and it was both a shield for Rowan and a final crushing hammer for Gwenna. "You told her I was dead," he whispered, and the pure cold venom in that whisper made Gwenna flinch. "You tried to break her spirit. Not for the pack, not for power. For sport. The dungeons are too good for you." He looked at his captain. "Take them to the black cells, the ones beneath the mountain. They will await the pack's judgment at dawn." The black cells. No one had been sent there in a generation. A gasp rippled through the hall. "No reet!" Gwenna's shriek of pure, unadulterated terror was cut off as the heavy oak doors slammed shut behind her, leaving a ringing, profound silence in their wake. The feast was over. Hundreds of eyes, no longer hostile, no longer mocking, were fixed on one person. Rowan was standing alone in the vast, open space between the pack and the throne. Her hair was wild, her simple tunic was rumpled, her knuckles were white. She was in every way a creature of the wild dropped into the heart of civilization. Her heart was a drum against her ribs, the adrenaline of the fight still coursing through her. She was braced for the next attack. In the forest, victory was only a pause before the next threat. She scanned the crowd, her eyes darting from face to face. The scents were a confusing storm. Fear, yes, but also astonishment, and something new, something she couldn't name. Then a single sound broke the silence, the clack of a shoe on the marble floor. Matron Page, the first matron, the stern-faced elder with the iron-grey hair, was stepping away from the head table. She walked slowly, deliberately, into the open space. Rowan's muscles tensed. She dropped into a half-crouch, her instincts screaming. This woman was an alpha, a leader. She was a threat. Page stopped a few feet from her. She didn't smile. She didn't offer a hand. She simply looked Rowan up and down, her gaze sharp and appraising. She saw the feral stance, the wary eyes, the calloused hands. She saw the wolf, and then in an act that stunned the entire dominion, Matron Page lowered her head. She bent her back and performed a deep, formal bow. It was not a bow of greeting. It was a bow of fealty. You saved him," the old woman said, her voice thick with an emotion Rowan had never heard before. "When he was lost in the wild, you saved him. And you saved him again. Tonight." Page rose her eyes, meeting Rowan's. "We were blind. For 10 long years we were blind, led by snakes. You, with your wild eyes, saw the truth in 10 minutes. A scarred alpha with one eye standing near the matron looked at Rowan, then at his king, and then he too bowed. "Our Luna," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. A regal woman in dark silks bowed her head. "Our queen." The words rippled outward, one by one, then in 2s and 3s, and then in a great sweeping wave, the alphas, betas, and elders of the Stonecrest Dominion bowed. The sound was like a forest bending in a great wind. Rowan staggered, her mind reeling. This was not aggression. This was not submission. This was respect. This was acceptance. The overwhelming tide of hostility she had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a new, powerful scent, awe. She was lost. This was a language she didn't know. Her eyes darted around, looking for an anchor for the one scent, the one person she understood. She looked for Rhett. He was standing by his throne, exactly where he had been. He hadn't moved. He was just watching her. The ice was gone from his face. The king was gone, and the man, her basalt, was there. His face was a raw, open canvas of emotion relief, overwhelming pride, and a deep, soul-shaking wonder. He saw her confusion. He saw her fear. He saw the girl in the nest of pine boughs, not just the queen who had unmasked a traitor. Rhett held out his hand. It was an invitation, a promise. Rowan moved. Her bare feet were silent on the cold marble floor. She walked past the scarred alpha. She walked past the bowing matron Page. She walked through the sea of 100 lowered heads, her eyes locked on his. It was the longest walk of her life, a journey from the wild to the world, and she did it in 10 steps. She reached the dais. She didn't kneel. She didn't know how. Instead, she did what her instincts told her. She walked straight up to him, close enough to feel the heat from his body, and she lifted her trembling hand. She placed her palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. She closed her eyes just for a second. She felt the steady, powerful thump. 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 Basalt. She whispered her voice, a raw, broken thing. It was a question, a statement, and a plea all at once. Rhett. He corrected his voice, just as thick. He covered her hand with his own, pressing it harder against him. His skin was fire. He is Basalt, and I am Rhett, and we are yours. He pulled her against him, a sudden, desperate movement. He didn't kiss her, not here, not yet. He simply held her. He buried his face in the wild tangle of her hair, his arms a steel band around her, and he inhaled. He breathed her in pine earth, and Rowan as if he were a drowning man, and she was his only air. He was grounding himself. He was reminding himself that this was real. You are home, he murmured, his voice, for her alone, a vibration against her skin. I left the woods, but I left my home. You were always my home. Rowan's hands, which had been fisted at her sides, slowly unclenched. She slid them up his chest and for the first time held on. This, she whispered, her voice muffled against his suit. This is Pack. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes, his grey, golden-flecked eyes. This is our Pack, he confirmed. And you are their queen. Rowan flinched at the word. I am Feral. You are Truth, he said, his intensity holding her captive. Listen to me, Rowan. Not a Luna. Not a helper who walks behind. A queen. My equal. He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away the grime from her cheek. A Luna supports the Alpha. A queen rules with him. This Pack, I have been blinded by this. He gestured to the silk, the stone, the ceremony. By civilization. You have the instincts. You have the honesty. You see the world as it is. You smell the lies, and you smell the truth. I need you. Will you teach us how to be a Pack again? It was not a command. It was a plea. The Alpha King, in front of his entire dominion, was asking, not telling. Rowan looked at his face. The face of her king. The face of her wolf. Then she looked past him, at the hundreds of shifters, still silent, still watching their faces, a mix of hope and fear. They were lost. They had been betrayed. They were a Pack without a true center. They were her Pack. A slow, deep breath filled her lungs. She was a wolf, and a wolf protects her Pack. I will try, she said. For the first time in 10 long, agonizing years, a true, unrestrained smile broke across Alpha King Rhett Kincaid's face. The feral Omega of Greenwood Expanse did not become civilized. Not really. She never learned to like high heels, and she still preferred to eat her meat rare. She never lost the scent of pine and wild earth. But the Stonecrest Dominion, it changed. The concrete cells in the containment wing, Queen Rowan had them torn down, the stone walls shattered and replaced with a sanctuary, open to the wind and sun, for any shifter, lost, feral, or broken, who needed a place to heal. She taught the guards how to listen to the silence between the heartbeats, and how to smell a lie on a politician's breath. She taught the elders that loyalty was not protocol. It was a bond, a living thing that had to be fed with honesty, or it would starve. They called her the Wolf Queen, the feral heart of the Dominion. And he was her Alpha King. He was Basalt, and he was Rhett. And finally, after 10 long, broken years, they were both truly home. And that is the story of the feral queen. She proved that you don't need a crown to have power, and you don't need a voice to speak the truth. Sometimes the wildest hearts are the ones that are the most loyal. The forest taught her to survive, but her king, he taught her how to live. What did you think of Rowan's story? Do you believe Gwenna and Corbin got what they deserved? Let me know in the comments below what your favorite part of the story was. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this story and want more tales of fated mates, hidden identities, and epic werewolf romance, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. Click that bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support means the world and helps me create more stories just for you.